From a bevy of top secret, highly secure locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider, the podcast on the cusp of regional recognition with our usual crew, sports editor Nick Talbot, Tom Orsborn, Jeff McDonald. I am Mike Finger. It has been quite a week since our last Spurs Insider podcast. It started with the highest of highs for the local Cagers, and now after playing what apparently is the favorite for the NBA title this year, the Mephis Grizzlies, things aren't looking as great as they did a few days ago. Two ugly losses back-to-back. What is the state of the Spurs, Jeff McDonald?
It's kind of funny. Like these podcasts, like the vibe of them, it all depends on what day we record them on. If we had recorded this a few days ago, we'd be talking about this great winning streak the Spurs are on. They had beaten both Boston and Denver, who are, powers in their respective conferences. They were looking great. They were getting Derek White back from the injured list. They're going to be injury-free for the first time all year. And then on Saturday, the first game that they're injury-free for the first time all year, they suffer a 17-point loss to the Mephis Grizzlies, which was the largest victory in Memphis history over the Spurs, a record that lasted all of 48 hours because Monday night they came back to the AT&T Center and beat the Spurs by 31 points. So the state of the Spurs is they're all over the map, as they have been for most of the season.
And this is not, even though the specific results are unpredictable, I think the difference there is the overall state of the Spurs in terms of being unpredictable is kind of predictable. This is for a team in this situation, which still is unfamiliar to the denizens of South Texas, to the denizens of the locations where the Spurs Insider listeners listen. You're not used to having a team like this. You're used to having a team that generally beats who it's supposed to beat and is competitive against everybody and consistent basically from night to night, week to week. That's not the case for a lot of NBA teams kind of in the middle of the pack. And this is just sort of what it's like to have a team that's basically a 500 marginal playoff team. You're not going to get the same group night after night, week after week, and it's going to make you want to pull your hair out every now and then to think, well, why can't the team that beat Boston and Denver even be competitive against Memphis? That's just the way it is, isn't it?
No, become comfortable with being uncomfortable, Spurs fans. And
that's a Lonnie Walker line, I think.
Yeah. I was wondering in a 7-game series how this would have turned out. Spurs down 0-2 now, so 7 games. What's the outcome of that series?
I think this is if we're talking about a Spurs Grizzlies playoff series, that's a bad matchup for the Spurs, weirdly.
Yeah.
Something about it, like that. Some teams just don't fare well against another opponent for whatever reason. And God, I don't know who fares well against the Grizzlies the way they've been playing the last couple of nights. That's a good team.
But they've won 7 in a row.
Yeah, there was some interruption there with their COVID stuff. But man, that's a good team.
So who wins between the Memphis? Who wins between the Memphis Grizzlies and Ditka?
Oh, Ditka, I think.
It's always Ditka.
But the other thing about watching Memphis over the past weekend, I guess, you can talk about young cores, and the Spurs have a nice one, and we were writing stories and playing up how encouraging and hopeful the Spurs were about their core, 4 days ago. It's one thing to have a core of young guys who can be something. It's another to have a core of young guys headed by an absolute superstar in Ja Morant. And that's still kind of what the Spurs are waiting for, to see that one guy become just a total difference maker. And Ja Morant was a number 2 overall pick who looks like he could be better than the number 1 overall pick a lot of years. And he's got a lot of stuff around him. So even though it's kind of a bummer for Spurs fans to see, how the team got outplayed the last couple of days, I don't think there's going to be, by the end of the year, much shame in knowing that you lost a couple of games to the Grizz.
Yeah, I just think for Spurs fans, it's just a matter of keeping expectations in check. And I understand that can be difficult when you have, a 3-game winning streak and a couple big wins in a row. You start to get excited. The team starts to build your expectations, and they kind of got brought back to reality in crushing and fiery fashion against the Grizzlies. There's sort of like a Lucy with the football effect sometimes that I think Spurs fans are having trouble dealing with. But if you stick to the big picture, this is a 500 team. Like I said it last week. This is a 500 team, give or take. So when they're going to regress the mean, either positively or negatively, and it's going to create some wild pendulum swings, I think.
Well, if we would have looked ahead, and we did look ahead last week when we recorded this podcast, knowing that there was going to be 4 games before the next one, and those games were Boston, Denver, and 2 against Memphis. If we would have predicted last week that they went 2-2, most of us would have said, yeah, that's about right. Yeah. Probably not the specific 2 victories and 2 losses, but I mean, overall, they're right where they've been for most of this season. Like they're a 500 team. So,
what can you take from those Grizzlies games? Anything besides the fact that Grizzlies are better than you think?
Why
is the Spurs defense really that bad? Because going into those games,
why did they get so many wide open threes? I was trying to figure that out. How does that happen? It's just, is it Morant just penetrating but they just had a huge amount of wide open threes.
Probably the threat of Morant plays into that.
Yeah,
but also you tend to remember more wide open threes when the other team makes every damn one of them.
Yeah.
and there are some games where you give up a few wide open threes and the other team, makes half of them, and it doesn't seem so overwhelming. But the Memphis was just making everything.
We were going to that game. That series with Memphis. Some numbskull wrote about how the Spurs defense seems to be coming around. They were on the cusp of cracking the top 10 for the first time in a few years. And so I'm wondering, were they frauds, or was Memphis really that good?
And they never figured out a game plan for Kyle Anderson.
Never did. I tried to give Pop the opening for that, but yeah. They need to go box and 1 on Kyle Anderson, is what I was thinking.
Didn't you ask how to slow Kyle Anderson down?
Slow-mo.
Yeah.
If you slowed Kyle Anderson down, he would be going backwards.
In all seriousness, he's having a heck of a year. And,
he really is.
The last 2 games.
Much more. I mean, the only 2 games I've seen him play, 3, because I played the Spurs 3 times. But the last 2 games are the first 2 Kyle Anderson games I've seen in a while. And he's just really more confident with his own scoring than he was when he was here. He was like, he almost, he was sort of Boris Diaw without the scoring here. He's really become very much more comfortable and confident looking for his own shot, knocking down threes. I mean, I know everything was rolling for Memphis and the game was out of reach last night in the fourth quarter. And, in that case, you tend to play looser. But Kyle hit a corner 3 where just his body language, he looked like Steph. Like the second he let it go, he knew it was good and was trotting back. So that was something we never saw from that dude when he was here. I mean, he was a nice player, but I think those 2 games, those last 2 games, both were the most points he's scored against the Spurs since he left.
He's looked good. Another person who made a return, not in the same way that Kyle Anderson did, but to the lineup, was Derek White. What did we think about both of his first 2 games since returning were those awful Memphis games for the team?
They're still 0-3. They're 0-3 with Derek in the lineup this year.
I thought in the first game against Memphis, Derek, for a lot of it, was maybe the Spurs' best player. Like he looked good pretty quickly coming back. Then he started showing some rust. But I mean, I think the results of those 2 games notwithstanding, his impact will be a a pretty positive thing
if you had told me he was going to have an 18-point game and a 2 for 10 game, I would have thought they would have been reversed.
Yeah.
I didn't think he'd come out of the gate with the 18-point game, but I think it just is a sign it's going to take a while to adjust. Not just him to adjust to playing minutes and getting back into an NBA feel again, but also the team adjusting for him, because it has sort of reconfigured the bench minutes, and that bench that was so dominant in a lot of games without Derek White hasn't been the same in the 2 games with him back, which I think is to be expected. Guys are kind of trying to figure out their space again. With Derek in there playing 20-something minutes and having the ball in his hands a lot. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, and you wrote about the challenge of reallocating the minutes with Derek back. I don't think it's as huge of a deal in that they were playing 9 guys. I think it's possible to just add a 10th, because that basically gives you 2 different groups. I mean,
that seems to be what they're doing, but it has just in the 2-game sample size has really just torpedoed Devin Vassell's minutes.
And I don't think
playing,
there's,
but not as much as he was.
I don't think you can judge anything big picture on those 2 games, because as you've pointed out, they were 2 blowouts, and everybody, there were anomalies in both. I mean, Trey Lyles got sent into the first game just because Pop was looking for anything to work as the game was getting out of control. And then last night it was kind of the same way. You don't know how those minutes would have been kind of divvied up if the game had been out.
But it's just a math equation. If White's going to come in and play 20, somebody's going to play less minutes.
I don't think somebody's going to play 20 fewer minutes. I think that maybe five guys will play 4 fewer minutes. And I think that can be fine. What do you guys think about lineup wise? Is Derek just kind of easing his way back on the bench? Is that his long-term role, the bench point guard?
Well, to answer your question with the question, if you were going to start him, who would you bench?
That's kind of my point.
Spurs Twitter has done a 180 on that too, but I kind of agree with it. I think you would bench Lonnie, which is weird to say considering where we were at 1 year ago when it's like, hey, let's give this guy some minutes. But I don't know if that's the answer. I don't think that's the answer, but if you're going to bench anyone, he's probably playing the worst of anyone in that starting lineup outside of LaMarcus, and you're not going to bench LaMarcus.
Dude, can I just ask something fundamental here, which I think gets...
Why start now?
Your starting lineup does not have to be your best 5 guys.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely not.
I think too often people get lost in that. It's like, well, this guy isn't as good as this guy, so he should be starting over him. That's not how it works.
It's almost the opposite. You want 2 units that are balanced in some way. Not opposite, right. but you know what I'm saying.
I mean, aren't the Spurs the poster child for that too? I mean, they didn't start Manu Ginobili for years. I mean, that's
right.
People should understand this.
Right. So, like, getting someone out of the starting lineup and replacing that person, whoever you don't like, with somebody better, that's not a panacea. I mean, it's did you like that word?
Not really. Very fancy.
Everybody's still going to play. The same 9-10 guys are going to play. So it's, if you're mad at DeMar DeRozan or LaMarcus Aldridge or whatever, like, just taking him out of the starting lineup doesn't fix what you're upset about. Like, people get too upset about the starting lineup. And I think that if Lonnie Walker's struggling and Derek White is playing great, which he's not, but let's just use that as an example, then that just makes your bench worse. And your bench, while they were beating Boston and Denver and the Lakers and the Clippers, the bench production was a huge reason for that. So, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't know. It's is that how that works? I just think that, to me, it could be positive for the whole team if Derek White becomes the point guard of that second group and makes that second
I
group
think
work
what
the way
people
it
want
did
to
before.
see, whether it's a starting lineup or not, and I understand the reasons for it, is they want to see Derek White and DeJounte Murray playing minutes together because that seems to be a very good defensive backcourt. So I think that's what people were sort of clamoring for last year, and we kind of got it a little bit in the bubble. But LaMarcus wasn't there, so it made it easier to just start your 5 best guys. So you don't have to, but you don't have to start Derek White to play them together, those two together, if you so desire. So,
what does another fundamental question, which I think I might know the answer to, but
when you're
just
saying
to
fundamental, like, do you mean like fun hyphen demental? Like, are you saying it that way?
like reading is fundamental.
It's both fun and fundamental.
Correct.
These questions are not that fun though.
Well, it depends on your definition of fun. What does Derek White give you playing next to DeJounte Murray that Lonnie Walker does not?
I would say Derek is probably a better defender, certainly a more consistent defender,
More
better
more
creator,
consistent all the way around.
just more consistent all the way around. But
Yeah.
again, you can bring him off the bench and like it seems like he's going to play the same amount of minutes anyway,
Right.
whether you start him or bring him off the bench. So.
My question is, I guess I've had a lot of questions, but isn't one of Derek's strengths his ball handling ability, his ability to make the offense go?
Yes.
And is that kind of redundant with DeJounte?
I can see your point there, but it's also the way the NBA is going. And let's put as many ball handlers and creators on the floor at one time and throw the ball around and just play. So I don't think that redundancy really matters that much to me. If you want to play with both,
I don't have a strong feeling here either way. I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
I don't know how much this factors into it at all, but personality-wise, he just seems to be more suited, comfortable with coming off the bench. And I'm not saying DeJounte would, pout and go into a funk, but it just seems better. They just seem better suited for the roles that they have.
Right. I don't think anybody is advocating for DeJounte Murray to come off the bench. He's clearly your starting point guard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're saying playing them both together. And who do you – yeah.
While we're sort of on the subject, what do we think of the season that Lonnie Walker IV is having so far?
He admitted last week that he was down on his lack of consistency. I mean, he said that himself when asked to assess how his season's gone. So far, that was the first thing that came out of his mouth.
And again, that's to be expected from somebody in his spot in his career. I think for the most part, you go back to when he was drafted. If you thought you were getting this guy, I think you'd be okay with that. And he's going through what a lot of players go through, in that when they're not playing, they're kind of the flavor of the month, a year. The fans want to see more of him because they don't know what he can't do yet. And then you see
him
more
and
of him.
You see his flaws a little bit.
Exactly.
Or the places he needs to improve. And it's a consistency thing. He's got that. He's got that raw athleticism. He's a lot better when the Spurs can get out and run, which I don't think they've been able to do much lately. I mean, you have to get stops to be able to do that. When Memphis is shooting 97%,
right,
it's hard to get out and run. But he's better in that type of game. He's probably been a better 3-point shooter than you think. I think he's right around that 40% spot. But yeah, the consistency just seems to be an issue at this point. And like you say, maybe to be expected. But yeah, it's just interesting. He was flavor of the month at this time last year, and Spurs fans thought he was a star in the making. And I just wonder what sort of the Spurs fan consensus is on that guy right now in February 2021.
I guess when you the thing is, now you've got Keldon Johnson, who's 11 games in a row scoring in double digits. He's averaging 17 points, 8 rebounds in that span. And in his last 4, he's averaging nearly 19 points and 9 rebounds. So when you look at him, what he's doing at his young age, I guess fans are saying, how come Lonnie can't do that? But
they're two different guys.
On the flip side of consistency, Keldon just been the screaming, hollering Keldon Johnson is something to behold.
He is a bleeping character, according to DeMar DeRozan. If we were to we're taping this on Tuesday, the morning after the second Grizzlies game. If we would have taped this Friday morning before these Grizzly games, what would this podcast have been about? It would have been a lot of Keldon Johnson, right?
A lot of Keldon Johnson. DeMar was coming off a 30-10 game.
Uh-huh.
Weren't they in 4th place almost?
They were up in 4th place.
Yeah.
Yes, they were. And then tumbled.
They were about to host a first-round playoff series, boys.
There were.
That says a lot about the NBA this year too, because there's a lot more parity.
In both of those games against Boston and Denver, there were 2 or 3 minute stretches where these kids were just overwhelming. I mean, it was really, really fun to watch. And the last 2 games were not for Spurs fans. But was it with the closing stretch before halftime? Was that against Boston or Denver? Yeah, where, I mean, you saw kind of what I'm sure R.C. Buford, Brian Wright, Greg Popovich all had envisioned when they collected all these long-armed, long-limbed, athletic kids over the past several drafts. I mean, that's exactly what you wanted to see. And so I think when you're watching this team, if you're going to be a fan of this team over the long haul, like focus on those types of moments where you see what the whole franchise could become at some point. And it looks silly now, but much like Jeff wrote about defense, I think for Sunday, I wrote about how the personality is changing, how this, because I think Patty Mills mentioned after one of those games that now what we're known for, our identity is of these loud guys. We've never been noisy before. And now all these, Keldon Johnson screaming and DeJounte Murray and Lonnie Walker and down the list. Like that can be fun. And you're going to get blown out a couple of times, but that can be fun.
It's fun. It's funny when you bring that up, because I remember Kawhi's first, second, third year was somewhere real early before Kawhi really became an MVP caliber player. They're playing Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, and there's a play. I mean, I can still see where it was on the floor where Kawhi did that thing where he just takes the ball from someone. Like, I don't mean like the guy's dribbling and he steals it. I mean, Steph's holding the ball. Kawhi takes it out of his hands, goes the other way for a dunk. I remember like days later, we're in some other city, Pop talking about that play and how great it was. Kawhi just went down there, he dunked, he didn't beat his chest, he didn't scream, he didn't taunt, he just ran back on defense and played another defensive possession. So it's kind of funny how we've gone from that to now we're celebrating the dunks and screams and all that stuff.
Well,
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's there's been a culture change for sure.
It's a genuine kind of joy that these guys emit. I mean, it's not chest thumping and look at me, but it's just a genuine reaction to, their joy of playing the game. I know that's, a little over the top maybe, but yeah, it's just genuine with these kids, and it's very likable.
And I don't think it's
another honest question. Would we notice it as much as if it weren't in quiet arenas?
Well, that's interesting too. But yeah, I think you would. And also, I pointed this out in the column. I don't think it's a contradiction for Pop to have respected that about Kawhi's game and genuinely liked it about Kawhi Leonard, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, whoever, and also to genuinely be excited for Keldon Johnson to scream his head off. Like, you can like both. You don't have to. When Pop was saying that, he respected and loved how Kawhi just went down and did his business and didn't beat his chest, he wasn't saying that everyone who beats his chest is terrible. Like, different styles can work for different players, for different groups. And that style worked for Kawhi Leonard. And and in a different sense with Tim Duncan, and this style can work for this group. And
another fun one I remember is, you remember this cat named Austin Day that was on the team? He won a title. He has a ring with the Spurs
for a few months, right?
One of his first games he got in, he buried a three and runs down and does the thing where he puts the three fingers next to his forehead to celebrate. And Pop looks down the bench and asks somebody, like, what was that? Somebody told him he immediately yanked Austin Day out of the game.
Well, because he's Austin bleeping Day. Like, if that's one of your best players, you can do that. But when you're Austin bleeping Day, it's probably not going to work out well for you.
If Austin Day's in the game, it's because the game's already a blowout, you know?
Right. Right.
That's what I miss from being down on the court. Well, A, being in the arena, and B, being down on the court and seeing that kind of stuff.
Didn't Austin Day for multiple years, maybe the better part of a decade, hold a designation as the Spurs' last midseason acquisition? Or am I thinking of a different guy?
No, for a while, yeah. They that ended the Nando De Colo era in San Antonio.
That's right.
Not midseason acquisition, but trade. Trade deadline trade.
Right. That's what I mean. A trade deadline trade. And for a long time, Austin Day was their last one, and it led to a title.
They wouldn't have won it without.
That's right. As we're winding down here, I guess that's another. Well, do we really want to get into trade deadline stuff? Probably not this week.
We can talk about. First, you should tell people where to find the newsletter and all that stuff.
Okay.
And then we can talk about the games coming up if you'd like.
Well, I think you should be the host next time. Newsletter, the Spurs Nation newsletter, you can sign up for that, expressnews.com. Lots of stuff on expressnews.com. We've got a new thing where Tom and Jeff are doing triple takes after games, just riveting stuff, a lot of in-depth analysis. It's like you're watching the game twice. It's great. And also,
why are you so mean?
I'm just saying, I admire your work, and people will like it. Also,
triple take offense.
Also for the podcast, again, rate us. Just be honest. If you like us, give us a good rating. If you don't, I don't know how you made it 27 minutes, but be honest. We're not here for fake news. Give us your ratings. Also, like, write reviews. We enjoy those. That helps. So. And be nice or be honest, whatever. It's good for us.
You should tell them where they can find your columns, which are never ill-conceived and are always fully baked and never half-cocked.
Also, expressnews.com.
All right.
Thank you for that. Read Tom and Jeff first, but I'm also there. What you were giving hosting suggestions? How did you want to end this? Talking about games coming up?
If you want to, I don't care.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know, they play Minnesota. Like, you better win that one, right? I mean, like, there's certain games, you've lost twice in a row to the Grizzlies. You better show up and beat Minnesota, who has already beaten the Spurs once, by the way. But
that was the second night of a back-to-back, wasn't it?
And DeMar wasn't
there. First night of a back-to-back.
No, it was the second. And DeMar wasn't there.
There you go. So it's a revenge game.
Okay.
And then also this weekend at the Houston Rockets, who are on a roll.
Well, we can do that some other time, but who's going to win the Southwest Division? It might be the Houston Rockets. James Harden's Houston Rockets.
Have they lost since James Harden left?
Well, the Spurs beat them once.
Oh yeah, that's right. But they're on a long streak.
Yeah.
They're playing well with six in a row.
Yeah. And then, well, I think we might have you another podcast before the back-to-back against the Warriors next week. But this should be a make hay, get healthy week for the Spurs if they can take care of the Timberwolves and then go. And the Rockets are due to lose, so that's probably working in their favor.
The dreaded Golden State Warriors coming in.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have another award-winning podcast before the Warriors coming in.
I see.
So
I apologize.
We might just have two games to talk about next week, but we can get into more big picture stuff.
Speaking of award-winning podcasts, the Spurs are coming after us. Matt Bonner is coming after us.
Well, we shouldn't be advertising for our
I'm just saying.
rivals.
Well, but look, no. I think I'll take the competition head on. Like, they get, who's this guy, Win Butler, from Arcade Fire. We got Ringo freaking Starr on ours.
That's true. That's true. Also,
and his all-star band.
Also, we have no affiliation with the local Cagers, so you can expect honesty from this podcast. Whereas, naturally, the Spurs produced podcast, there's some things that they're not able to talk about. And we can, be fully upfront and transparent about all things related to our local Cagers. And also, this podcast always ends on a positive note, on a joyous note, and a reminder to all of our devoted listeners who we love that, you should think about the great stuff in life. So much in the world can bring you down. But I mean, if you're thinking about the NBA, that means that things can't be all bad. And, as always, you should remember to take care of each other and to keep it real.
Peace.